Welcome to Seniors at Play. I'm your host, Cassandra. I'm here today with Corinne, a retired financial consultant and currently a self-published novelist and an artist. Corinne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cassandra.
So tell me, before you're not retired, you
No.
still work.
I'm still
But
working.
prior to getting into novels and becoming an artist, what did you do?
Well, I was an artist first,
Okay.
and then I started to do publication of my artwork in terms of greeting cards because I didn't like the starving artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to school. I got an MBA in addition to my MFA, which is like Greek.
Right.
It was so complicated, but I got that in marketing management. My premise of going back to school was because I wanted to find out who are these people who buy art. When you go to art schools, and I went to school in Florence, Italy, they teach you wonderful things and how to be a great technician, but you're not so hot in terms of marketing your work and how to present it. So I went to Pace University and got my MBA on that. The question was, how do you depreciate? Also, they always talk about depreciation, and my question was, how do you appreciate art? And how would you consider certain things? And they couldn't tell me. So I figured out the easiest way to figure out who my market was and the type of people who are interested in buying art would be to become like a stockbroker, because the same people who have discretionary income to buy art are the same people who would be buying stocks and bonds.
Right.
So I did that for 18 years. And I decided enough was enough. It was very interesting. It was a good flip because when you are an artist, you're isolated.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a stockbroker, you got to be always aware of everything going on.
Right.
I left that after 18 years because I had 6 children in between there, and the school system. They went to Princeton. They went to the Plainsboro, Westminster Plainsboro School District. Very good, but you got to stay on top of the children and participate and be a full-time parent, and that's what I became afterwards. And when the last child finished high school, I started doing something else. I started to pick up my art again, started painting because I didn't want to do that while they were still young because I was so sure, Mom, I can help you.
Right.
Don't need that. And I took up my painting again, and I became a member of the National Association of Women Artists. And I had a lot of exhibitions. But there was always something that else I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I always wanted to write when I was a child, and then I decided to write as an older adult.
That's impressive. So when you left the finance world, did you find the transition to be hard? Because that was probably 8 hours a day, same thing daily. When you go into, writing and doing, creating art, it's not so much 8 hours a day, the same thing. So what was the transition like for you?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it is difficult because you have to be concentrating on just one thing. When you're painting, it's the whole painting that you're seeing as one complete unit, and it takes up all your time. I paint with the background to music, and that also is helps to. It's not boredom, but it helps the pace and the concentration.
Okay.
So to answer your question, it's not that much that you need to be focused in a different way. It's the same type of self-discipline. You have to be self-motivated. You have to be able to take one aspect and bring it to completion. You have to know when to stop. I think with if there's a correlation between being a stockbroker
Right.
and knowing your product, but also when you speak to people, you have to also know about rejection.
Right.
And how to hear no.
Right.
And how to find where your next market is or where to present it and position it perfectly.
And so what is your art focused on? Like what do you paint? What do you?
When I started to paint, when I was at St. John's, it was abstracts.
Okay.
Because my teacher was a student of Ferdinand Léger.
Oh, wow.
So I had that type of European orientation.
Mm-hmm.
That was fine. That was until I went to Italy. And that was after graduation from St. John's. I went to Villa Schifanoia Graduate School of Fine Arts, which was outside of Florence. You can imagine when the the abstract meets the Renaissance, it's a major collision.
Right.
It was an enduring type of change, and the colors in it that I painted or would paint endured, but the images changed. Instead of getting more abstract, I became more visual, so that it was a conversation, and that's what I wanted my paintings to have. A lot of times artists are not able to make it in terms of being accepted, and almost as a result they use code. All art is code, and if you are not told how to interpret the code, then you won't know what the painting's about.
Oh, wow.
When you look at Picasso's Guernica, you know the code if you see a star. I mean, it's just, with the sun, not the star, with the points on it, you know that's a sun. Or if you see a person's head or something like that, you know that code. What I decided to do, rather than reinvent the whole world and reinvent my artwork, I used certain codes that people are used to seeing. I did different types of paintings, and depending on the series that I wanted to do. I worked on sometimes flowers, sometimes portraits, sometimes themes of political significance. I did a series with another woman, other artist, down in Trenton, and it was on racism, and different types of racism. And we touched Black racism, Asian racism, Jewish racism, American Indian, more of a global in terms of South African, and there's one more which right now I'm not having a senior moment, but, but I can't remember. But we do art, and then I also did, because I am very a part of my church, I'm Episcopalian, liturgical images are also, and so I did for the Plainsboro Library. I did a series of paintings. It was 4 canvases large, 4 by 6 feet. Put them together to be a large stained glass window type of effect, where it was lift every voice and sing. It was for Black History Month, and it had 2 individuals in color, male and female, representing presence, and the child of the future behind them. And then after that, the effects of people who had passed on, who had done various things so that they would be able to contribute, like Jackie Robinson was in there.
Oh, wow.
We had the whole gamut, from slaves to modern day people, American soldiers, people in the 70s, and those paintings are hanging right now at St. David's in Cranberry, New Jersey.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So the reason why you got into finance was to understand your audience. Is that currently your audience, or was that 18 years spent studying your audience wasted?
No, it wasn't wasted. It was in terms of, I learned a lot. I learned cold calling. I learned how to present a project or a product for an individual, how to know where you are in the scheme of things. For instance, there was a grid, a matrix that we were taught. That there are 4 quadrants in the matrix, and based upon your product cycle development, you would be in one of these 4. One was a question mark. It's a new person, new development, new product. Another one is a star. That one meant that you were up and coming. Everybody would want you if we were talking about stocks. Next one's called cash cow, where, for instance, they don't have a bright new product, but they pay dividends to individuals, and that's why they buy that stock. And then after that, the dog. And the dog is a product that is dead. So if we were doing a stock, you'd have like a new stock that's let's say Microsoft was in the 80s. You didn't know exactly, or any new company or Facebook coming to the market. And then after that, it moves up to this other major with a star where everybody wants to have that stock. They don't pay dividends, but they pay in terms of cash, but they pay dividends in terms of stock. And then after that, it would become so successful. In the 80s, Microsoft was that. You knew like clockwork, they were going to be giving you stock dividends. Everybody would wait until that year, and then after that, by then you get more shares. It was split 2 for 1. And then after that, when they became larger, they would then begin to give income, as in dividends for alternative for buying their stock. Nobody wanted to be in the dog situation because that meant you're out of business.
Right.
So it kind of taught me in terms of also where you are with art when you meet your market. Everybody wants to be the collector's, cash cow.
Right.
And
I was going to say that. Right.
That's the ultimate. Nobody wants to be. Most artists are in the question mark because nobody else. It's a collector's. It's a business, and once an artist understands that, then they won't take it so personally in terms of rejection or having to move their product or not.
So our show is called Seniors at Play. You retired from financial consulting, but you're still doing this. Do you feel like you'll retire from writing and painting? No. So this is it. You love this. This is your passion. But you started doing this. How was the transition for your children? Because you said you have six kids. How was the transition for your children from mommy being at work all day in the finance world to now being home, painting, writing? They were older, I'm guessing, because you spent 18 years. Yeah, okay.
But in the beginning, they were small. And they didn't.
What made you take that leap, if you don't mind me asking, from the financial world straight into art? Like, once it was time? When was it time? When did you know it was time?
I knew it was time, mostly because my children needed me more at home.
Okay.
And then I took a buyout. I was a VP, and I left at that.
Oh, wow.
So enough was enough.
Right.
When I started with Merrill Lynch, there was an individual who said, he wrote this book. He says, you're going to have different times in your life. It's not going to be where you'll spend your life in one position for the rest of your life. You won't get that gold watch for having served your whole career. You're going to have multiple careers. You'll have retirements, and then you'll come out of retirement, and then you'll go into something else, you come out of that one too. At the time, I was in my 30s when I first heard that. This guy's nuts.
Right.
How does he know that's what everybody's going to do?
Right.
But they would, for some odd reason, they had some sort of forecast of what was possible. Velcro was going to come into this big deal because as seniors got older, nobody wants to go down and yes.
Right. Wow.
It's happening. So it wasn't such a foreign idea, to switch. I mean, you within the industry, you would make lateral switches and changes. So this was just another lateral switch. So when go back to your question, when my kids were young, they were in school, so they didn't miss me. When I was going back and forth, I put them on the school bus. I was home when they came back, pretty much, and then after that, homework. But then when homework started to be more and more difficult, I said, somebody needs more attention. Yeah. So it was a good timing. The buyout came, and I left that. And then after that, when I did start to do my painting full time, because I would be home, they'd be at school. It'd be funny, all the kids would come by, they want to know what I've done so far.
Right.
Check out
what did
studio.
You do all day?
Yeah, but they want to see the different canvases.
Right.
They were my critics. That looks good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And so tell me, with your writing, what do you write about? What are these books about? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Well, my books are about romance.
Okay.
All right. I am a member of the Romance Writers of America. And that is an industry that is mostly, predominantly female. Female readership, 84%.
That makes sense.
Well, but it's a $1 billion industry. I think part of the problem is it is a female industry. And then you'd say, what do you write? Romance. You're not serious, But
It is serious.
It's a serious part of the,
right.
of the
Because that's one of the
publishing
bigger,
world.
right? That's one of the bigger, in terms of movies, romantic
Movie.
comedies, right? Those are the big sells, right?
Yeah, it is that. But it is a woman's industry, so therefore, it doesn't have as much prestige. Most people think. I'm a feminist. Sorry.
That's okay.
Don't make any bones about it.
Right.
However,
as we should be.
Yeah. But what's real cool about my books is that I read. I won't go into the name of the author or the name of the book, but I read this book and I said, why is it this person has so much? The male hero was 28, and everybody was acting as if he had accomplished this wonderful stage, and he was doing everything, and everybody was so in awe of this man. I said, "What do you at 28? What do you know?"
Right.
I said,
especially for a man.
Yeah, right. And the female, she was in her early 20s, so in awe of him. I said, "Come on." I said, I want to write for a more sophisticated audience, where I don't believe that romance belongs only to young. Yeah, you can be young at heart, but it's not. You're not dead at 60.
Right, right. No, you're not. Absolutely,
you're not dead at 60. So, a lot of these books, the series is called Carpe Diem.
Seize the day.
Seize the day, and there are 8 books to the series. It's his side of the story and her side of the story.
Oh, I love that.
It is interacting in terms of they are self-standing. There are 4 books that you can read in succession, and there are 4 books on his side you can read in succession. But like a telephone conversation, if you only hear part of it, you won't know what's impacting on the other side.
Right.
So you can the way that I have done it is that it is supposed to be read together. So this one is a prequel, the prelude to a love story. This is the first book. This is her side of the story. That's his side of the story, the first book. What I find interesting is that I like to know what these characters are thinking. It's not enough just to hear, and I don't have any patience for the describing about this setting over, and more than just to get the story across. My books are dialogue driven.
Okay.
So that means that you will hear what they say to one another. You'll know when you read just one book what they've been saying to somebody else outside the presence of you and me. Or you'll hear what the person's thinking.
Oh, very
that
nice.
Causes them to do and say.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a different type of book, or the series of books. And then after that, because I give you all the information in the first book, but it's so much information that you'll know later on, well, she said that there, and you see it's a puzzle. So it's a romance book, but it's also a suspense book, and it's also a mystery.
Oh, wow. And where do you draw your inspiration?
From the characters themselves. They start.
So these aren't people you know. This is just like.
Well,
hey.
Some of them might be.
Okay.
Someone did know. They're bits and pieces. But the main character, his name is Prescott Hamilton. They call him Sonny for short.
Okay.
And I don't really know anybody like that. He's like the figment of what a man should be if you were in this situation.
Okay.
And she is, and what makes this story a little bit different is that she is 20 years older than he is. She doesn't look it.
That's a nice story.
Yeah. And then after that,
all right.
it's off
I like
to the
that
races.
feminism. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, tired of the other way around.
Right. Good for you.
So it starts that way, and he does find out, but that doesn't stop. Unknown to her, that's his sweet spot.
Okay.
He likes older women.
Oh, okay.
So it's a matter that he's ready. She knows there's an age gap, but she doesn't want to commit because the mores about, can't be chasing a younger man
Right.
and all these different things. And that doesn't stop him. So in these stories, you have somebody who is going to be the protagonist as well as antagonist. In my stories, both the female and female, are their own antagonists because they've got to get over certain things that stop them from being committing to one another.
Oh, wow.
But then they do.
Interesting. So you mentioned earlier that the reason why you went into the whole financing was because you didn't want to be a starving artist. What now? Are you a starving artist? Is this all?
No, I'm not a starving artist.
Did you plan for this financially to be able to do this and still, what is it? What's the story now?
The story is I'm comfortable.
Good.
Okay.
So it worked out.
I would like to be more comfortable.
Right.
Can always do that. And I think that these books are another opportunity. When you paint, one of the problems that an artist has is that there's just one painting.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants it. I like it. I want to buy it. How much is it? $10,000. Okay, thank you very much.
Right.
No longer interested. Do you have a copy? Nobody really wants a copy of.
They want the original.
They want the original.
Right.
But they don't want to pay for it.
Right.
The beauty of when you do something like this, you can share it with somebody else. And you don't have to worry about them saying, well, how much is it? Oh, $10? $15? I can handle that.
Right.
Right?
That's good.
And so it's a way of positioning your product so that, it's more of a contemporary. Painting is something that when you're in Italy or in Europe, or you see why they had so many artists doing certain things for these cathedrals, because they needed the decoration. They needed those things. And it was more of a, for a certain time, a certain place, these things were good for. But as time went by and people started to collect them, there weren't that many uses for them. So there are more artists right now than they are perhaps for the places where they should be.
Right. What else are you going to do? Like, you're writing books, you're making art. What else? What's next for you? Since you don't plan on retiring from this.
No, the brain is still going.
Right. What else do you want? What else do you want to do? Sounds like you love to travel as well. So
I do. And I've infected my children with that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
In fact, the other day, we were in Florence. My daughter gave me a trip because I had chemo, and past that, and I went to Ireland for 2 weeks, Giverny for 2 days, and then for 4 weeks we were in Florence, and we used that as a base. So, and my children all love to travel.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
that is wonderful. Well, I'm going to probably purchase these books because I love romance novels. I really do.
There are a lot of closeted readers.
I mean, I love. And so, are you planning on adding to the series, stopping there?
It's all
maybe
finished.
writing more? It's all finished.
The 8 books are finished. If you look in the beginning of the book, you'll see they're all finished. I'm doing it every 3 months, releasing them.
Oh, okay.
Because, one, I don't want people to forget, oh, I like that story. But with the way I read, and I think that a lot of other people like me, if you're into something, and because you're so used to television and series or something,
Right.
you don't want to wait for next year.
Right.
So I'm coming out every 3 months,
3 months. That's smart.
with these books. I've got the next set of books. So this one is a series about, I thought it was about her. It turns out it's really about him. How a billionaire CEO, because he is a romantic and he cannot find his romantic other, and it's so painful, he becomes something else. It's almost like a Beauty and the Beast type of situation.
That's beautiful.
The next story, series I wrote, is called Second Chances. And that is about, it's easy to fall in love with somebody who is handsome, rich, everybody's ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you saw and met a man who was a derelict, a street bum? Could you see him as your romantic other?
Mm. That's interesting.
Turns out that there is something in that story where this man falls on hard times and he's found by his other, and it makes him change.
Wow.
I also write books, and there's one series in fact, to let you know, when I start to write, it's as if it takes control. And when I was writing these books, I write to 3 o'clock in the morning and get up at 7 because I can't wait to find out what's going on.
You want to know what's going on, right?
I have this other book that I'm starting right now. It's about people who are incarcerated in prison.
And they find love.
They do find
there
love.
are people who love them.
They do find love.
Right.
Some of them, not everybody in prison is a bad person. They may have done something bad.
Right, that's true.
But that doesn't mean that they are a bad person. And this one, I'm not using it as a commentary in terms of bad person or the system is DOC is wrong. I'm doing it in terms of collateral damage that's done when people are incarcerated.
Right.
They have family members who die. There are certain things that they lose as an incarcerated person, their own person to be. And I think those things are not not
Very
exposed.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We really appreciate having you on the show today. If people want to purchase these books or your art, your website is where they can go?
They can go for my books, Corinne Julienne.
Corinne Julienne. We'll add it to the credits at the end of the show.
And the books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Nook and iPhones and things like that.
All right,
both the e-format as well as the paperback.
Perfect. Well, we'll add the information on our credits. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate you.
Nice meeting you.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And that's our show.